Brakte Hawa, Brakte Hawashai. Um, as you see, Apostle Gabar, he was just live a few minutes ago. He went live about 2 hours, and in Lord's will, we'll see how long the Spirit allows me to go. I kind of want to jump on that land back off of what the apostle was going into a little earlier, dealing with the conversion of these so-called Jews. You know, like I said, Barakate Hawa, Barakate Hawa Shai. Double honor to the apostles, of course. And honors to you brothers out there doing this work. Like I said, I just want to land back off of what Apostle Gabar was going over earlier. He mentioned about how the Jewish Encyclopedia says that that modern day Jewry today is found is pretty much Edomite. Edomites. They're not Israelites. They come out of the seed of Esau or Edom, and these devils know that. But what I wanted to touch on was going back to when these devils were first brought in to be converted. There's a lot of history, and the history is vast. There's a lot of history concerning biblical characters, concerning certain things that happen in the scriptures. And I just wanted to hit a few points on that and then just go from there, because when you go back to the these so-called Jews, they converted around the year 724 AD, if I'm not mistaken, under Kagan Bullen, which the word Kagan means ruler or king. And ever since that time, because it was pretty much what it was a war going on between the Crusades, which were the Christians, and the Muslims, and they both wanted the Khazarian Empire to conform to them or to join them, because that area of Khazaria, where the Caucasus Mountains was a very strategic region, because it was very mountainous and it was hard to conquer and it was hard to fight against. So instead of them converting to either Christianity or Islam, what they did was they converted to what's called Judaism. Now, make no mistake that when they converted to Judaism, they weren't converting to the law, statutes, and commandments of the Bible. They weren't converting to the Torah, the Tanakh, or the Tanakh. They were converting to Judaism, which Judaism is something that goes back to the Talmud. Now, the Talmud is a demonic book, so they didn't convert to being the Jews that worship the Heavenly Father, going back to the law, statutes, and commandments, and and as such, they converted to Judaism, which is not biblical, and the so-called Judaism goes back to the Talmud, and the Talmud is a straight up demonic book, so pretty much, I want to hit this one scripture at the beginning, this one scripture first, and then I want to take it from there, see how long the Spirit allows me to go. And pretty much this lesson is going to be centered around pretty much the conversion of these so-called Jews, because during the time of the Kagans, which were the kings of the Khazars, that wasn't the first time that the so-called Jews converted to being Israelites, so to speak, for lack of better words. There was other times in the history where they converted, but it was a forceful conversion going back during the time of the Greeks. All right, but I'm going to hit this one scripture first and then take it from there. All right, this is found in the book of just bear with me one second. This is found in the book of Esther, the 8th chapter. All right, and I'm gonna start at the 15th verse. Esther 8:15. It says, and Mordecai, which was a Benjaminite, he was the uncle of Esther, who her name was Hadassah, I believe her name was. She had a Israelite name, but it was changed to Esther, which I believe Esther, which means star, is if I'm not mistaken, it's a Persian name, Esther, all right, which means star, all right. And she was set up as the queen over in the Persian Empire, and pretty much the Lord had set that up because the Lord was going to show favor onto the Israelites, because there was going to be a major persecution that took place around this time, So the Lord set it up to where Esther was in a high position so that she can plead the cause of the nation of Israel, so that the king of the Persians back then, which was Ahasuerus, he could show favor unto Israel, and that's the reason why she was set up in that position. That's why Mordecai kind of cursed her out, because she was, she was playing around. She was being silent. She was, she wasn't saying anything. And he told us, look, don't think just because, you are in there and safe that you're not going to be dealt with. We might get dealt with, but you're going to get dealt with too. So this is what happened once Haman, who was a Edomite, an Amalekite, what he did was he had a plot against Mordecai, because Mordecai did not want to bow to him, and Haman, he was the second in command in the that realm that was ruled by the Persian Empire, the Persian king. He was the king's second in command, but Mordecai refused to bow to him. So what this guy was doing, he was plotting against how to get Mordecai and the people of Israel killed. So he was he's going to bring accusations to the king against him and against the Jews, so he can destroy them, and he could hang them, on gallows that he was setting up. So what happened was, when the whole thing came up, the Lord turned it around and caused Haman and his 10 sons to be hung on those gallows that they set up for Israel to be hung on, and he destroyed those Edomites back then, and any of the enemies of the Jews back then. That's why it was called the lot of the Feast of Pur. Now, the word Pur, P-U-R, comes from the Hebrew word Pawar, which means lot, singular. But the name of the feast is called the Feast of Purim. Now, the word Purim goes back to the Hebrew word Pawar Yum, which is lots, with an S at the end, because it's plural. Okay, so that was, see, these things that happened with Haman also go back to that old hatred that Esau has for the nation of Israel, and when you go back to the beginning, you go back, to the time of Jacob and Esau, that hatred was embedded in both those children, who would later have nations of people come out of them that would constantly war with each other. It's like oil and water. As every time they get together, it would be some kind of tension. That's why no matter how many so-called black leaders, or Latino leaders or whatever, jumped up and tried to bring a union between the Edomites and Israel, it never works, because there's an old hatred that's set up there from the beginning. This is the Most High's will. Matter of fact, before I read this, let me go to the book of and it's funny because this thing here, joining hands with all nations, this is a one world order thing, and the scripture say, "Though hand join in hand, the wicked shall not be unpunished." All right, so this is the book of Romans, the 9th chapter, and I'll start at the 14th verse. This is going, Paul was going back to the beginning of the birth of Jacob and Esau. Romans 9:14. What shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with the Most High? The Most High forbid. For he saith to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So then it is not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of the Most High that showeth mercy. So the Most High is the one that shows mercy. He's the one that sets up one and brings down another. It says, for the scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might show my power in thee, and that my name, oh, wait a minute, what? And that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. And that's when the Most High's name became famous, was during the time when the Lord delivered us out of the land of Egypt. That's why he told, when Moses, first thing Moses asked him is, what's your name? He said, I am that I am. But then as you read on down, he said, when he mentioned his name, Yahweh, he said, that is my memorial forever. And that was a name that Moses brought to the children of Israel and before Pharaoh and them. Why? Because that was the time that Most High's name was going to be fully exalted, made famous and renowned throughout the world. All right. That's just a tidbit, I guess, or not a tidbit. That was a big chunk of meat right there. Therefore hath he mercy on whom he will have mercy, and whom he will he hardeneth. It says, thou wilt say then unto me, why did he yet find fault? For who has resisted his will? And that's the point. No one can resist the Most High's will. You read in the book of Psalms, the 33rd chapter, the Lord said that the counsel of the Lord standeth. So anything that's in the Most High's heart, whatever he wants to do, he's going to do it. And he's bound by his word. That's why I said that his name is above his word, because he's not going to break his word. Whatever he said, he's going to do it. It says, nay, but O man, who art thou that replies against the Most High? Shall a thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? Have not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make one vessel unto honor and another unto dishonor? So the Most High is the potter, and he could do whatever he wants. That's why he created Israel from one lump to be holy, and he created Esau from the same lump to be the wicked. It's just that simple. And he put an enmity between these children, going all the way back to the garden. So this thing was an old hatred. That's why Cain and Abel, they had friction. Why? Because that curse that the Lord put upon this serpent, that there was going to be enmity between the children of the Most High, which were known as the Adamites, or the chosen line of Adam, and then later on as the Israelites, and the seed of the serpent, which was Cain, and later on they became known as the Edomites. And that's why there's still that tension today. That's why that tension will never go away. We just finished watching that movie in the night, whatever. With this guy Ben Affleck, which we call Ben Asscrack, something about in the night or something like that is the name of the movie. And they kind of show you a little bit of that racial tension back then with the Ku Klux Klan and all of that, the KKK, because that hatred is embedded there. So this same hatred that was embedded there goes back to it also goes back to when Haman, who was an Edomite, of the line of Amalek, was in power. So this is Esther 8:15. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. So they just took it upon themselves to call themselves Jews. But that don't mean nothing, because they still are from their lineage, But the point is that you have had in the past, you have had times where these nations, especially Edomites, would try to take on the nationality of our forefathers. This is the book of Deuteronomy 32 and 26. This is the Lord speaking to Jeshurun, which the word Jeshurun comes from the Hebrew word Yashawan, which means darling or first. It says, I said I would scatter them into corners. Now the corners represent what? The ghettos. This is speaking about Israel. So the Lord said he would scatter Israel into corners. I'm kind of little all over the place, but Lord's will, everything's going to tie back together. And I want to make this other point. It says, because I said I would scatter them into corners. Now, Jake is the one that's in the corners. When you put something in the corner, you throw it in the corner, and you forget about it. You trying to get it out of the way. And that's why Jake is in the ghettos. Now, these ghettos were set up on purpose. You know, that's why they're called projects also. So they set up on purpose to keep Jake in pretty much in that lowly condition. Why? Because the Most High had set it up that way. Now these so-called Jews that call themselves Jews, when they were in Europe, there was a place called the ghetto, and the reason why they set up those ghettos because they understood the prophecy. Because when you read the book of Arthur Koster, the 13th tribe, he said that those ghettos were self-imposed. See, they were set up that way because they understood the prophecy, and that's why these the so-called Jew women shave off their hair bald and put on wigs, because they're trying to fulfill the prophecy of the scriptures. You know, because they've studied the scriptures. You know, that's just, you know, a little tidbit. All right. So it says, I said I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. And has that not happened? Has not the remembrance of the nation of Israel ceased from among men? Yes. Let me get 2 scriptures on that real quick. What was the other one? There was one. Okay. Let's go to all right, let me start off with this one here. Numbers 23. And just bear with me 1 second. Let me just put. Here, Numbers 23 and 9. I'll start at 7. Numbers 23 and 7. And he took up his parable and said, Balak, the king of Moab, hath brought me from Aram, out of the mountains of the east, saying, come, curse me Jacob, and come, defy Israel. How shall I curse whom the Most High hath not cursed? This is Balaam's response to Balak. Or how shall I defy whom the Lord hath not defied? For from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I behold him. He's talking about the nation of Israel because he was looking at them, right? Lo, the people shall dwell alone. Why? Because the Most High separated us from all these different nations, and shall not be reckoned among the nations. And we were not recognized among these nations. We were not written among these nations because the Most High had separated us to be a holy people, a saintly people, a special people, a peculiar people, a special treasure. So the Lord, so we're, and then even today, we're not reckoned among these nations because they don't recognize that we are the Israelites, even when you tell them. You know, that's why they look down on us, because the Lord said that we would be in a low condition. We would be in the corners, in the ghettos. We would be a byword. You know, we would be an astonishment and a proverb to all these people wherever the Lord would bring us. And this is no mistake. And the main one, the one that got it the worst is Judah. Judah got it the worst. You know, that's why they caught the most hell out of all the tribes. But all the tribes respectively have caught hell. You know, Judah wasn't alone, but Judah caught the worst because they were the head, you know. So it says, and shall not be reckoned among the people. All right. Who can count the dust of Jacob and the number of the fourth part of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my last end be like his. Why? Because he knew that he was a Midianite. He was a heathen. So he wanted to be the people of the Lord. See, but he can't because he's a heathen. All right. This is Psalms 83. You know what? I just started the first verse. Psalms 83 and 1. A song or psalm of Asaph. Keep not thou silence, O Most High. Hold not thy peace and be not still, O power. Why? Because we're in a jacked up predicament, right? So when the Lord speaks, his prophecies come to pass, and he comes to bring his deliverance to us. So Asaph is saying, look, hold not thy peace, O power. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult. And they are making a tumult. And they're trying to destroy us. That's why when you go back into the history, Lord's will, you know, if the Spirit allow, we'll get it. You know, you had those nations that came up and wanted to be a part of this. You know, they wanted to be a part of, matter of fact, let me just hold that on deck. You know, they wanted to be a part of the truth, because by conversion, their people in the past were brought into our land when we lost Samaria, the foothold in Samaria. So they wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to build with us. They wanted to get down. But then what did our forefathers tell them? Zerubbabel and Joshua and them? He said, man, you ain't got no part with us. You can't build with us. Get out of here. And they were saying, because from our fathers back in the days, I believe it said Esarhaddon or one of those names, you know, like I said, Lord's will get it. You know, we've been building since back then. So we want to build with y'all. I said, man, you ain't building with us, man. Get the hell out of here. So what did they do? Instead of just leaving, they became the ancient scoffers, and they started troubling the work of the Lord. You know, so them heathens were troubling the work of the Lord. So these guys that get kicked out or that leave because they have a problem and they start scoffing and trying to overturn the word of the Lord, they're heathens. They're like those ancient heathens that troubled the work of the Lord. Here it is, we're building, and they're trying to tear it down. That's why when you go back to the history, we were building with one hand, and we had an instrument of war in the other hand, because you had to build and fight. So now today we're doing the same thing, but it's spiritual. You know, we're building and fighting at the same time. You know, that's why, you know, you edify at times, and other times you have to go into cutting mode. You know, you have to we have to be defenders of the gospel. So they're doing the same thing that those heathens were doing back then. See, because these nations at one time or another, they all tried to be Israel. They all try to be the people of the Lord. Why? Because they understood that the people of the Lord, the Israelites, had the Most High, the power, the real God, the only God, as a part of them. You know, they knew that there was no other God. Their gods was bullshit, and they saw the power and the magnitude and the majesty that the Lord would show for his people, and they saw that there was favor showed of this power in the heavens to the nation of Israel. So they wanted to get a part of that, but they can't, because they're heathens, you know. All right, so it says, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and that's what they've done, even to this very day, and consulted against thy hidden ones. Who are the hidden ones? The Israelites. Why are we hidden? Because they don't want to acknowledge that we are the people of the Lord. Why? Because we would not be reckoned among the nations. They have said, come and let us cut them off for being a nation. No, because to the world, they look at us as niggas, spicks, spooks, wetbacks, coconuts, skins, you know, tontos, you know. That's what they look at us as. But we are the children of Israel. We are the people of the Lord. We are the princes of the power. And they know this. So it says, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. Now, do we still, does the world still know of the name Israel? Yes. So what does this mean, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance? Meaning that the people of the Lord don't have that name upon them. Why? Because the Lord said we would be a byword and a proverb, you know, in the countries where we will be scattered at. And that's why the people, the other nations, look at us as such. They look down on us, man. All right. So now they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. And then it goes to list all the different nations that have done this. And what? The tabernacles of Edom, which is the very first nation on top. Why? Because the Lord don't make mistakes. Esau is going to be ruling at the end. Who is in control of the United Nations? Are the Chinese? Did the Chinese set that up? Did the Japanese set that up? Did the Hamites set that up? You know, did any of those different nations that convened there, did they set that up? No, that plot of land belonged to the Rockefellers. They owned that plot of land, and they donated that plot of land for the United Nations building. So who owns and controls that? The so-called Jews, the Edomites, the so-called white man. You know? All right, so going back, where was I? All right, so that was the Psalms 83. Okay, so they were not reckoned among the nations. So going back to the Deuteronomy 23 and 27, it says, I said I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. And that's what happened. You ask the average person out there, who are the Israelites? What they're going to say? The so-called white man. They're the Jews. They ain't going to say the black man. They ain't going to, so-called black man or the so-called Puerto Ricans and none of that. They're going to say the white man. It says, were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy. Who's the main enemy? The so-called white men, the Edomites. So were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy, least the adversaries, which is plural. What is adversary? Satan. Least the Satans, the adversaries, should behave themselves strangely. Let's look up this word strangely. Let's see what that says. Strangely, right? Nakar, which is an actual stranger. To recognize, acknowledge, know, respect, discern, regard. So at least the adversary should behave themselves strangely. Now, how are they behaving themselves strangely? Because they're heathens, but they're trying to say that they're Israelites. They're trying to say that they're Jews. Okay? And then when did this start? All right, let me read the rest of this and we'll hit some of that history. Were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy, lest the adversaries should behave themselves strangely, and lest they should say, our hand is high and the Lord have not done all this. So pretty much they're acting as if they're the people of the Most High. Okay? This is a good scripture. The brother GMS Vegas, sit down. Revelation 11:9. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, which is 350 years. And they see all of Israel, especially Judah, dead in a dead state, without having flesh on them, without knowing that they're Israelites, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves, because they're not telling Israel the truth. They're not putting you in graves. They're not putting you to rest. They're not giving you the truth of who you really are. It says, and they that dwell upon the earth. And then you have these hoes, these scoffers that are trying their hardest to destroy and demolish what is being built. The same thing that these devils are doing. James White, the Edomite, vocab, no class, Mahon, which I call him Mahon. Mahon is a big turd, in Spanish. All right. So pretty much in all these other clowns are fighting to devour and destroy this truth and this knowledge that Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua had built. But they can't, because if it be of the Most High, you cannot overthrow it. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another. What was those gifts? Slaves. Because these two prophets, or meaning these two nations, or these two kingdoms, tormented them that dwell on the earth, and over the time we've had these nations, we've jacked these nations up, over time. GMS Rome all over again. Psalms 2:8. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. GMS Hawaii Yehowadah, Revelation 2:9. Know thy work. I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Now, back then that applied to Jake, but it also applied to the Herodian dynasty, because the Herods, they were calling themselves Jews and they were not. But it mainly applied to the to the Israelites back then that were being the devil. Okay. Yep, the brother Mexicanos en la Escritura. Yep, Mahon, big wet turd. Yep. It might be dry though, dry turd. All right, so let me go back to this, Deuteronomy 32:27. Were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy, lest their adversaries should behave themselves strangely, and lest they should say, our hand is high, and the Lord hath not done all this. All right, now, this is in a Jewish encyclopedia, 1906. This is Hyrcanus, John Hyrcanus the first. Now, Hyrcanus was a title. Like you had Ptolemy. Ptolemy was a title. Seleucus, that was a title. That's where you had many different Seleucid kings. You had many different Ptolemaic kings. Tsar is a title. Kagan, like Kagan Bullen, that is a title. So you had many different titles. King is a title. Queen is a title. So you had many different titles back then. So Hyrcanus was a title that was worn by these Hasmonean kings, which the Hasmoneans were Israelites, and they were from the tribe of Levi. Okay, and then you had Mattathias, which was the father of the Maccabees. He was the father. Then you had Judas, who was surnamed Maccabees, which the word Maccabees comes from the Hebrew word Makwabath, which the word Makobath means hammer. And they were called hammer because they were hammering these nations and kicking their ass for the things that they did to us. So the Lord wrought salvation through Judas Maccabee and the rest of his brothers. All right. So it says, high priest, prince of the Hasmonean family, born about 175, died 104. He was a wise and just ruler and a skillful warrior. As a young man, he distinguished himself as a general in the war against the Syrian general Sendibius, whom he defeated. That John was given the surname Hyrcanus on account of this victory is a tradition of which Gratz and the others attribute historical significance. When his father, Simon Maccabees, Simon Maccabees, which is one of the Maccabean brothers, that was his son, John the first, or John Hyrcanus the first, was assassinated at Jericho by his son-in-law Ptolemy. All right. I'm gonna jump down around here. So, like I said, this is a title, Hyrcanus. So now you had John the first Hyrcanus, and then you had John the second Hyrcanus. You know, so there were different ones, because when you go into the history, you know, they say, you know, you have to distinguish which is which, because this particular John, John the first Hyrcanus, he was rough, man. He was a rough dude. You know, he was cold kicking ass, and he made the Edomites convert. He kicked them in the ass and made them convert. Now, John Hyrcanus II, he was a sucker. He was a puppet. He was weak, you know, and Antipater had him wrapped around his finger. That was the one that was a sucker, you know, but this one here, he was rough, man. He was kicking ass. All right. So I'm going to jump down to forcibly converts the Edomites. So there was a war that he had with the Syrians. And after he won that war, it says, after victoriously ending the war in Samaria, it says he proceeded to subdue the Edomites. Subdue is to put under your rule. So if you subduing somebody, you putting them under your rule. That's harsh. You ain't gonna be nice and tell them, look, you know, you can come and join us. You know, no, you subdue somebody, you putting hell on them. It says always a menace to the southern parts of his domain, which was the Edomites. With funds which he is said to have obtained from David's sepulchre, he hired foreign troops, dismantled Ador and Marissa, the strong places of Edom, and forced the Edomites to accept the Jewish religion and submit to circumcision. This is the first instance of forcible conversion in Jewish history, because we read that during the time of King Ahasuerus, which was a Persian and the Mede Empire, you had people, other nations that called themselves Jews. So they so-called converted. But that don't mean shit. And even this conversion don't mean shit, because he forced them to convert to it, but they still Edomites. That's why when Herod sat upon the throne, they didn't accept him as being a king, because they said he's not an Israelite. He's an Edomite. And they understood that back then. It says, and forced the Edomites to accept the Jewish religion and submit to circumcision. This is the first instance of forcible conversion in Jewish history. In this, Hyrcanus allowed his zeal for the Jewish cause to lead him to take a step which later wrought harm. Yeah, because through this conversion, that's how the Herods were able to get into power, positions of power, through Antipater. Because Antipater, which was the father of Herod, or he was the beginning of the Herodian dynasty, he gained favor from Mark Antony, from Julius Caesar, and different other Roman senators and emperors, and he was able to manipulate power and set up his sons as governors in the land of Israel. See? It says, in this, Hyrcanus allowed his zeal for the Jewish cause to lead him to take a step which later wrought harm, for to the Edomites belonged the family of the Herodians, who were to bring about the ruin of the Hasmoneans. And that's exactly what happened. Once the Herod got in power, that's when all hell broke loose, so to speak, and they gained power and the kingship over the nation of Israel, which, if you get technical, it goes back to the curse, you know, and to the prophecy that was set up. Let me see if I can find it. This is Isaiah 7. Let me start up above there. Isaiah 7. I'll start at 13. And he said, hear ye now, O house of David. Is it a small thing for you to weary men? But will ye weary my power also? Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin, which is a young woman, shall conceive, get pregnant, and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel, which the word name Emmanuel is I'm now Allah, which means I'm is a people. I'm now Allah means the Most High with us. Okay, the Most High with us, or God with us. And then when you go to the Matthew, the 1st chapter, it breaks it down also. It says, butter and honey shall he eat, that he may know to refuse the evil and choose the good, right? For before the child shall know to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land that thou abhorrest shall be forsaken of both their kings. And that happened, you know, because when Yahushua was on the scene, who was in power? The Herodians. So there was no more kings in Israel. So that's true to the prophecy. So when Yahushua came on the scene, it was already set up that the kings of Israel or the kings of Judah would not be sitting on that throne. Okay. Yep, that's right, brother GMS Vegas. Sit down. Yep, which because Herod he did use his position to marry the Hasmonean princess Miriam. That's right, because his father Antipater, as the history goes, he married an Arabian princess called Cypros. And then when his son was set up as ruler, he married the princess of the Hasmoneans, Miriam. Okay, so there's a lot of history just dealing on the fact of how the Herods got into power, you know, in that whole scenario. Okay, so now, so he said that once John Hyrcanus I set up the conversion of the Edomites forcefully, that brought a ruin to the Hasmoneans, right? So now I got here, this is Herod. Matter of fact, let me read this real quick. This is Matthew 2:1. Now when Yahushua was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. So this was the time when Yahushua was born. Before he could choose good or evil, the land was forsaken of both their kings. And who was in there? The Edomites. So now when you look up the word Herod, right? Herodes, Herod, heroic. It says the name of a royal family that flourished among the Jews in the times of Yahushua and the apostles. Herod the Great was a son of Antipater of Idumea, appointed king of Judea BC 40 by Roman Senate at the suggestion of Antony and with the consent of Octavian. Because what happened was, you know, you had a king, I believe it was Aristobulus the first, if I'm not mistaken, and he was staunchly against Antipater and them. He hated them. He knew that they were the devil. So what happened was somehow they got him out and they put in his son, you know, who was a puppet or something like that. And what happened was when Herod, the so-called great, went to take this particular king to set him up as a king, he went to the Romans because he was always getting favors from the Romans. And what happened was when he went to tell him, look, I want you to set up this guy as a king. He was actual Hasmonean, Israelite. And they said, no, we're going to set you up as king. So the Romans were the ones that set up Herod and gave authority for Herod to be the king of the Jews. Why? Because he was favorable to them, because through his father Antipater and him, they were getting a lot of benefits from the Herodian dynasty. So they saw him as a benefit to the Roman Empire. So they set Herod up to be the king. You know, so it was Mark Antony that set him up, and also Octavian, which was the name of Augustus Caesar. That was his actual name. Okay, he at length overcame the great opposition which the country made to him and took possession of the kingdom BC 37. You know, and when he took possession of this kingdom in BC 37, the last king that actually sat on the Hasmonean seat was Antigonus II Mattathias. Okay, it says also known as Antigonus the Hasmonean, died 37 BCE. Why? Because Herod delivered him over to the Romans, and the Romans killed him. See, It said was the last Hasmonean king of Jerusalem. So he was the last king in Jerusalem. Antigonus II Mattathias, which, if I'm not mistaken, his father was Aristobulus the first. No, here it goes. He was the son of Aristobulus II of Judea. Okay, so when he got killed through the Romans, when he was delivered by he was delivered up to the Romans by Herod, then they took him out. And that's why he took the crown in 37 BC. And after the Battle of Actium, he was confirmed by Octavian, which is the actual name of Augustus Caesar, whose favor he ever enjoyed. He was brave and skilled in war, learned and sagacious, but also extremely suspicious and cruel. Hence, he destroyed the entire royal family of the Hasmoneans. And when you do the research on Herod, I think it said he killed like 45 of the royal family, the ones that had that were heirs of that throne. He took out that whole family. He took out that whole line. You know why? First and foremost, because he's the devil. You know, but it was really because it was prophecy, and we read in the scriptures that before the child can choose good or evil, the land of Israel would be forsaken of both her kings. Okay, put to death many of the Jews that opposed his government, and proceeded to kill even his dearly beloved wife Miriam of the Hasmonean line and his 2 sons she had borne him. By these acts of bloodshed, especially by his love and imitation of Roman customs and institutions, and by the burdensome taxes imposed upon his subjects, he so alienated the Jews that he was unable to regain their favor by his splendid restoration of the temple and other acts of munificence. He died in the 70th year of his age, the 37th year of his reign, the 4th before the Dionysian era. In his closing years, John the Baptist and Yahushua were born. Matthew narrates that the commanded all the male children under 2 years old in Bethlehem to be slain. You know, so he was the one that was set up into power, and he had good favor with the Romans. So we believe that this guy Trump is the reincarnation of Herod, the so-called great. Because what were the main achievements of Herod? You know, the main achievements of Herod, besides being the devil and manipulating deals for the Romans, he also built many buildings for them. And what's Trump known for? All them towers out there that you see that have Trump's name on it, he doesn't own those. All he did was build them up. You know, he's a master builder. You know, he knows how to build, you know. So he set that up. He built all those things up. So that's the same thing with Herod. When you go back in history, you see that the Herods, especially if I'm not mistaken, Herod himself, he was the one that built many of those buildings for he built up the temple, and he also built up different buildings for the Romans. You know, I can't think of any names specifically, but if you want, you could do the research. You find out the different buildings that he set up. And this guy Herod Trump, you know, he also I said that on purpose. He also is a builder, a master builder, and he's built stuff for this empire. And the people that's above him, which are the international bankers, you know, they were back then too in the Roman Empire. Okay, yep, Masada, he built Masada, you know, which was a actual mountainous region where he built up as a fortress. All right. Like I said, Antigonus II was the last Hasmonean king. Then you had Antipater the Idumean, which was the beginning of the line of the Herodian dynasty. All right. And then you had John Hyrcanus II, which when he was in rulership, Antipater was chumping this dude, man. You know, it says Hyrcanus sought counsel from Antipater. This was the second satrap of Idumea, a neighboring province conquered by Hyrcanus' grandfather, John Hyrcanus I, who, seeing in the weak-willed Hyrcanus a possible tool for his own desire to control Judea, induced him to wage war on Aristobulus, which was the actual king, you know, of the Hasmoneans at that time. And there was another point that had came to mind, but Let's see. All right, so I mean that's pretty much it. No big deal on that. All right, so pretty much these devils they've had their desire in their mind on taking over our land for the longest. Why? Because it goes back to that old hatred, you know. Even when the Babylonians came in and started destroying the temple and taking Jake out, these devils are right there, right with them, right alongside with them, and helping them destroy our temples. So, like I said, there's a vast history on the whole situation with the Herodian dynasty, and then when you go further up to around the seventh, eighth century AD, around there, when the Khazars, which are nothing but descendants of the Herodians, came into power by converting to being called Jews. All right, so let's see. I'm gonna go back to Numbers 20. I'm gonna go to Numbers 24. All right, Numbers 24, and I started 15. It says, and he took up his parable and said, Balaam, the son of Beor, have said, and the man whose eyes are open have said, he have said, which heard the words of the Most High and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. Because it's possible for the Lord to put the Spirit on these other nations to see the future. When these Edomites give out when these Edomites get certain dreams, they'll see certain things in the future, and that's pretty much what that's an actual vision that the Lord allowed them to receive of things that are coming. But does that mean that they're prophets? Does that mean that they're Israelites? No, the Lord can do that. He can put the Spirit on. He said he's going to pour his Spirit upon all nations, and they shall see visions and all that. That everybody's seeing visions of the end. Matter of fact, if you type in on YouTube, people that have had dreams or visions of the future and or catastrophes and stuff like that, you'll have all different types of people giving their dreams or visions that they had. It says he have said, which heard the words of the Most High and knew the knowledge of the Most High, which saw the vision of the Almighty, falling into a trance, but having his eyes open. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. Because he knew that Yahushua was coming, but he knew that that wasn't the time. And then he knew that once Yahushua came, he's gonna see him, but he's not going to be near to him. Why? Because he's a heathen. There shall come a star of Jacob, which is Yahushua, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, which is Yahushua, and shall smite the corners of Moab, because Moab is going to get jacked up. The so-called Chinese are going to get jacked up and destroy all the children of Sheth. And whoever is not an Israelite, they're going to get jacked up. They're going to be slaves in the kingdom. But the only ones that's going to be fully destroyed after a period of 1,000 years is Esau. It says, and Edom shall be a possession. Now, what is Edom? Edom is the land. They're going to be slaves for a certain period of time, but their land is always going to be there. So once they're rounded up and burnt up, that land is still there. Land is inheritance. Land is power. Land is money. So who's going to get that land? Judah's going to get that land. Seir also shall be a possession for his enemies. So even Jake is going to get all of that land. Judah is going to get all of that land down there. And Israel shall do valiantly. Out of Jacob shall come he that shall have dominion, and shall destroy him that remaineth of the city. All right. And this is a actual future prophecy. And when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. Why? Because Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. No, I'm just going to pull that up, hold that on deck, in case the Spirit allows me to go to that. But I want to focus on where we at. I want to focus on Amalek. All right, now Amalek, who is Amalek? let's go back to Genesis 36th chapter. I'm gonna read the first verse. It says, now these are the generations of Esau, who is Edom. So Esau's name was changed to Edom. Esau, from the Hebrew word Ishashwa, which means wasted he, and Edom from the Hebrew word Adawam, which means red. Jump down to the 8th verse. Thus dwelt Esau in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. And these are the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in Mount Seir. Jumping down to the 12th verse. And Timnah was concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare to Eliphaz Amalek. And these were the sons of Adah, Esau's wife. So pretty much Amalek was a grandson to Esau. All right. And out of this line is where you get these so-called gutter rats that have plagued the world with their demonic presence. Okay. Now, I want to go from there to the book of Exodus 17 and 8. Then came Amalek and fought with Israel and Rephidim. And this is the reason why the Most High told Saul to kill all the Amalekites, because of what they did to us during this time. So we fought against them, right? And Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men and go out, fight with Amalek tomorrow. I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of the Most High in mine hand. So Joshua did as Moses had said to him and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon, and Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on the one side and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady unto the going down of the sun. And Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And we're coming to that time now, because the Lord said he's going to put out the remembrance of Amalek from under the sun, which he told Saul to take care of that business, but Saul didn't take care of that business. But it's spiritual, because we read that Balaam prophesied of the end time, the latter times, that the Lord was going to deal with Amalek. You know, so they had to still be around. You know, the Most High, he does what he wants, man. He does all his pleasure. You know, no one can resist his will. You know, and that's part of the fear of the Lord, man. It says, and Moses built an altar and called the name of it Yahweh Nissi. Wait a minute, what? He built the altar and called it what? Yahweh Nissi. What? I thought nobody knew the name. I thought Moses and them didn't know the name. Because if Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob didn't know it, then Moses couldn't have known it, right? According to the IUIC. For he said, because the Lord Yahweh had sworn that Yahweh will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. See? So that's why even to this day you have that going on. All right, so now let's go from there to the book of Esther, the 3rd chapter. And the first verse, and after these things, King Ahasuerus after these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. See? So this guy here, this Haman, who was second in command under Ahasuerus in the Persian Empire, he was an Agagite. Now, what does it mean by being an Agagite? Well, you know what? If you look up that word Agagite, I believe they tell you Agagia. See, Agagite, I will overtop. Said of Haman the Agagite. Okay, so they don't really go into explaining it. But down here, Agagite, Haman, Josephus explains it as Amalekites. So it's Amalekites. All right. Now, when you go to the book of First Samuel 15. Let's see. See if I can find it real quick. Just bear with me 1 second, brothers. Okay. All right. First Samuel 15 and 17. And Samuel said, when thou wast little in thine own sight, was thou not made the head of the tribes of Israel? And the Lord anointed thee king over Israel. And the Lord sent thee on a journey and said, go and utterly destroy the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they be consumed. Wherefore then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord, but didst fly upon the spoil, and didst evil in the sight of the Lord? And Saul said unto Samuel, yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, and have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag, the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. So this Agag was an Amalekite. So that means that Haman was of a royal line, was of the kingly line of the Agagites, you know. So it says, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites, but the people took of the spoil sheep and oxen, the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice unto the Lord thy power in Gilgal. So this guy here, his line goes back to this king. So he was of a royal line. Yep, we read it, but I'll read it again. This is a good scripture. GMS Vegas, sit down, Numbers 24 and 20. And when he looked on Amalek, he took up his parable and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his latter end shall be that he perish forever. And we're coming to that time now. All right. Yeah, I'm going to read this. The brother Quadarsha Pot put a scripture, and this is good too. Deuteronomy 25 and 19. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy power hath given thee rest from all thine enemies round about, in the land which the Lord thy power giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven, thou shalt not forget it. All right. So pretty much. So going back here, so this guy his line goes back to Amalek, you know, Haman. All right. So not only does his line go back to the Amalekites, it also goes back to the Macedonians. Just bear with me 1 second here. This is the edition of the book of Esther. Right. The editions of Esther, chapter 7, verse 10. For Ammon, a Macedonian, the son of Amadatha, being indeed a stranger from the Persian blood, and far distant from our goodness, and as a stranger received of us, had so far forth obtained the favor that we show toward every nation, as that he was called our father, and was continually honored of all the next person unto the king. But he, not bearing his great dignity, went about to deprive us of our kingdom and life, having by manifold and cunning deceits sought of us the destruction, as well of Mordecaius, which is Mordecai, who saved our life, and continually procured our good, and also of blameless Esther, partaker of our kingdom, with their whole nation. For by these means he thought, finding us destitute of friends, to have translated the kingdom of the Persians to the Macedonians, because he was trying to get the Persian Empire back then to come to Esau, but it wasn't time yet, because that shows you that eventually in time, the Greeks took over the Medieval Persian Empire. And since I mentioned that, let's go to First Maccabees, the first chapter and the first verse. It said, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian. See, because they were the next in line, but they were calling themselves Macedonians, even though they weren't Macedonians, they were Edomites. But they started taking over the world in that instance around the land of Greece. That's why they call themselves Greeks today. That's why they say civilization started with the Greeks, because that was the beginning of Esau coming back into power after being destitute. It says, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece. You know, and then there was a couple of other scriptures that I had that I did a lesson in Spanish on that go into the word Macedonian. Matter of fact, let me see, because there was a good one there too. Let me see if I could find it. It's in I think it's in Second Maccabees. No, First Maccabees 6. Start at 1. It says, about that time, King Antiochus, traveling through the high countries, heard say that Elymas in the country of Persia was a city great renowned for riches, silver, and gold, and that there was in it a very rich temple, wherein were coverings of gold and breastplates and shields, with Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian king, who reigned first among the Grecians, had left there. Why? Because it was set up in the prophecy that Alexander the Creep was going to be the king that governed over the Grecians, and that was the first time that Esau really got into power in that region. This is Daniel chapter 8. I'll start at verse 20. The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Midian and Persia, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia. The great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. And we've read that that Alexander the Creep, he was the one that first reigned over Greece. You know, he was the first ruler of Greece, you know, of the Grecian Empire. That's how Esau got back into power. So this guy, Haman, not only was he an Agagite, not only was he an Amalekite, not only was he a Macedonian, he was an Edomite. So all this ties together to show you that Esau is a so-called white man, you know, and they've tried their hardest to cover up this history of them being the Edomites, and that's why they took on the name of Jews, because they know that that was the greatest name and the greatest people on the planet, you know. Let me see, First Maccabees 4:61. Let me get that real quick. The brother GMS Maccabean Spirit, First Maccabees 4:61. Let me get that real quick. Just bear with me 1 second, brothers. 4:61. It says, and they set there a garrison to keep it, and fortified Bethzura to preserve it, that the people might have a defense against Idumea. Yeah, because pretty much, you know, Israel we were always fighting against them Edomites, you know, because that goes back to the prophecy, you know. All right, so let me see what else I got here. Yeah, you know, pretty much. I mean, I've gone through that, you know, through the main points of the history of Haman, you know, of how the Herodian Empire got started through Antipater, the Idumean, and Antipater's father was named Antipas, and then Antipater had sons, and through the Roman Empire and the favors that he received from Mark Antony and Octavian, which was Augustus Caesar, he was able to set up his sons, you know, to rule and govern, you know, in Israel. You know, we read the prophecy on how before Yahushua knew to choose good or evil, that the land would be forsaken of both the kings, you know, of Israel. You know, and that happened. Why? Because it was prophesied that the Herodian dynasty would have to come in there and govern for that time period, because the Lord was pissed off. You know, we tied in how the Amalekites and the Agagites and the Macedonians are all Edomites from the seed of Amalek. You know, and the Lord said that was going to be one of the nations that we were going to have problems with from generation to generation. You know, as the name of the lesson is, you know, Antipater, Amalek, conversion of the Herodian dynasty. You know, now there's a whole history of how the Khazars came into power, because these are the same people. You know, the Khazars came into power, and they had kings and set up and everything. Now, when the Khazarian Empire was finally destroyed, to leave you in closing, that when the Khazarian Empire was finally destroyed, it was broken up into two parts. You had You had the royal family, the regal family, royalty, and I use that term loosely because them dudes are the cave beast. But anyway, the royal family, and then you had the commoners. Now the commoners went down into what they call the so-called Ashkenazi Jews, or they go the so-called Jews that went down into Germany, and that area, in that region. Those were the commoners that went down there. Now the royal family of the Khazars went to Spain, you know, and they became the Sephardic Jews. Now you have Sephardic Jews that are actually Jakes, and then you have Sephardic Jews that are Edomites, that are of the so-called royal line of the Khazar Empire, you know. So you have a mixture there. So that's what happened when it was broken up and it was finally conquered. The commoners went down into like Germany and those areas, Poland and all that, and the upper class, so to speak, went to Spain and became the Sephardic Jews. But like I said, you have Jakes that are Sephardic Jews, and then you also have the so-called royal family of the Khazars that also became Sephardic Jews. You know, so like I said, there's a vast history of all of this stuff, you know, that took place. You know, and man, this even on the Herodian thing, man, you can go on for days on all that different history, you know. But you know, we pretty much hit the basic points, things that pertain to the scriptures, and things that tie the scriptures and bring the scriptures, even though the scriptures don't need none of that, but they tie the scriptures together and bring them to life, so you could kind of get the examples, you know, through history, and show you that the scriptures are true, you know. So with that, you know, I'm sign off. You know, I say Barak Tehawa, Barak Tehawa, and Shalom to all the Akim out there that's striving and fighting. Stay strong, keep on fighting, keep on doing it. You know, 2017, the year of death, destruction, and also of diligence. You know, keep the fire going. You know, keep keep throwing them logs into the fire, man. Keep that fire roaring nice and hot, so that everybody around the world can see this truth, you know. So with that, I'm gonna say shalom, and I hope you brothers have been edified.